Hey there everyone, my name's Psycho. I currently raid with BDGG and will be competing in the upcoming Race to World First in Castle Nathria. I'm a Demon Hunter main and have been spending the majority of my time the last few months on the Shadowlands beta. I wanted to share my thoughts on the Covenant options for Demon Hunter. Currently, I feel that Kyrian is the best option overall, but I wanted to give you an overview of all the abilities Demon Hunter is granted through the new Covenant system introduced in Shadowlands. Hopefully this video will guide you towards making your meaningful choice and help prepare you for the content you're about to face in the coming expansion. Before we get started, please make sure to head over to Twitch and follow my channel, as well as subscribe here on YouTube. I'll be streaming pretty much every day once the expansion releases and putting out more videos during Shadowlands. With all that being said, let's get started with our first Covenant, Night Fae. The Night Fae Covenant resides in Ardenweld, the third zone you encounter while leveling in Shadowlands. The Night Fae's signature ability is called Soul Shape, which is an ability that transforms you into a fox and teleports you 15 yards forward while increasing your movement speed by 50%. You will be able to recast this ability a few times within the 12-second duration of the buff to teleport again before returning to your normal form. For Demon Hunter specifically, there are very few situations in which you'll be able to put this ability to good use, mainly because this is a spell that grants you mobility. And as a Demon Hunter, you typically have more than enough of that already, and if you choose Night Fae as a Demon Hunter, I don't see you gaining much use out of this ability for anything other than the cosmetic effect. The Night Fae Covenant ability for Demon Hunter is called the Hunt, which is a castable ability with a range of 50 yards. Using the Hunt will charge you to your target, dealing a large amount of nature damage to them and root them in place for 1.5 seconds. The Hunt will also apply a strong damage over time effect to up to 5 total targets in your path to the original target. Another powerful aspect of this ability is that the original target that you chose to hunt will invigorate your soul and heal you for 25% of the damage that you do to that target for 30 seconds. Initially, I was very excited to test out the Hunt. On paper, it sounds like it would be an incredibly fun ability to use, but in reality, it's a little bit awkward to use during combat. The 1-second cast time it has is pretty clunky to use combined with the other abilities in the Demon Hunter toolkit, and doesn't exactly add very much in terms of making the class feel any better to play. While having a 50-yard castable spell is fairly unique, you often suffer from odd interactions like line of sight or terrain issues that often make the cast fail. You can also put yourself in the way of harmful mechanics by the time you reach the target, as it has a travel time to your target as opposed to an instant teleport. While the initial burst of single target damage of the Hunt is fairly strong, the most impactful damage output from the Hunt is from the damage over time effect, especially if you're able to spread it to 5 targets. But with the 1.5 minute cooldown, it doesn't necessarily line up with any other Demon Hunter abilities, so you typically just end up using it alone on cooldown, or saving for when you need a large amount of single target burst. In Mythic Plus, the Hunt is hard capped at 5 targets, so it has a ceiling for how much damage it can do, and can sometimes be awkward to get the full value of the dot on 5 targets, causing you to lose out on damage. In Raid, this can be strong when a large single target burst is needed, but you rarely will be able to get the full value on 5 targets for the dot on most of the boss fights. To be quite honest with you, my favorite part about this ability is the self-sustain you get from the leech effect on the target that you hunt. This can come in handy in a lot of situations where you'll be attacking that target for the full 30-second duration. With the recent nerfs to Demon Hunter survivability toolkit in Shadowlands, this can really come in handy on boss fights in Raid and Mythic Plus, where there's a high amount of group damage. With all that being said, in my opinion, the Night Fae Covenant abilities leave a lot to be desired for Demon Hunters and don't exactly add to the toolkit or damage profile in any meaningful way. But this ability can be a good pick for a lot of situations, depending on the specific type of content that you do. For instance, the Hunt has been doing quite well in PvP recently for a large burst of single target damage. Now let's move on to Revendreth, the final zone you will encounter in Shadowlands before reaching level 60, where we meet the Venthyr Covenant. The signature ability for the Venthyr Covenant is Door of Shadows, which is a castable spell at a targeted location within 35 yards. At the end of the 1.5 second cast, you'll be teleported to the selected location. Fans of Overwatch will recognize Door of Shadows as it's similar to Reaper's Shadow Step. This is another mobility spell, so for Demon Hunters, this isn't the most useful addition to our toolkit. You mostly end up using this ability outside of combat to cover distance between pulls, or to ascend terrain you normally wouldn't be able to. The Venthyr Covenant ability for Demon Hunters is called Sinful Brand, which is a strong damage over time spell that deals shadow damage over 8 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown. The target that you brand also has their melee attack and casting speeds reduced by 30% for the full duration of the dot. This seems really boring at first as it's just a single target dot, but this ability has an added effect that is really cool. When you cast Metamorphosis, Sinful Brand is applied to all nearby enemies. This is very powerful when you're able to use meta on a large number of targets in Mythic Plus or raid encounters. Sinful Brand adds the Demon Hunter's damage profile quite well, as it's currently the strongest covenant in terms of pure single target damage. And there are very few spells in the Demon Hunter toolkit that deal damage over time. With the added effect on our Metamorphosis, this also is very strong uncapped burst AoE. From what I gathered through testing, the simplicity of this ability is where it gains its value. Strong single target damage every minute. This is very impactful in many areas of Shadowlands content. For example, in Mythic Plus, having this spell for every boss fight and Manifestation of Pride gives you a strong, consistent single target damage at times when you need it most. For me, the only really disappointing part about this ability is the attack and cast speed debuff. In PvE content, it's hardly noticeable when applied, and through my extensive dungeon testing, I never really ran into a situation where I thought, oh, it's really good we had Simple Brand there. Also, with Metamorphosis still being the only 4-minute offensive cooldown in the game, I found myself wanting to hold on to that cooldown longer in order to get more value out of the Simple Brand AoE effect on larger trash bowls, which usually just resulted in me losing uses of Metamorphosis throughout a dungeon or a boss fight. So if you wish to team up with the Vampire Covenant, as they've been referred to by the community, Venthyr is a solid choice for the content you're trying to do if you're looking for an ability that does strong single target damage, but also has potential for burst AoE. Next, we head over to Maldraxxus, the second zone you will travel through during your journey through the Shadowlands to level 60. The Necrolord's signature ability is called Fleshcraft. This is a channeled cast you can use every 2 minutes that will grant you an absorb shield equal to 20% of your maximum health that lasts for 2 minutes. The bonus effect to this ability is that when you channel Fleshcraft next to fallen enemies, the shield's effectiveness grows depending on how strong that particular enemy was. For example, elite or boss enemies can make the shield grow up to 50% of your maximum health. Fleshcraft actually adds to the Demon Hunter toolkit and provides us with a little bit of defensive benefit throughout the course of a dungeon or raid encounter, and I found this surprisingly fun and helpful. Fodder to the Flame is the ability specific to Demon Hunters that choose the Necrolord Covenant. With Fodder to the Flame, you can summon a demon every 2 minutes that will immediately start attacking you. Once killed, the demon drops a pool of blood and for 15 seconds reduces the damage enemies in the pool deal to you by 15%. Also, the demon spawns an Empowered Demon Soul, which when picked up gives you 25% damage for 15 seconds. In theory, Fodder to the Flame sounds pretty cool, but in practice, it is in my opinion one of the most frustrating Covenant abilities to attempt to use properly in every form of content. At lower item levels, I was finding that killing the demon usually took 5 or 6 damage globals, and would sometimes reduce me to almost half health. In group content, the demon attacking me would sometimes contribute to my own death if I tried to use Fodder to the Flame as a damage or defensive cooldown. More often than not, if I tried to cleave down the demon with the rest of the enemies in a pull, it usually would not die quick enough, and I would lose the on-demand damage or damage reduction that I needed. Or the tank had already moved the trash pull away from the pool of demon blood and the empowered demon soul on the ground, granting me very little or absolutely no value from the cooldown I just used. Fodder to the Flame has been reworked a couple times throughout the course of the alpha and beta cycle, but with this being what seems to be the final product before the expansion releases, it truly leaves me confused with what the original design of this ability was supposed to be. I understand that not every ability can be super impactful, but though all of my testing of Fodder to the Flame, I really wasn't able to find a single situation in which it was even remotely helpful or contributed to my offensive or defensive ability in any meaningful way. As a demon hunter, you rarely want to stand still in one place in a pool of demon blood, even while tanking. And it was very hard to get any value out of the empowered demon soul, as things are close to dead by the time you obtain it unless you're on a boss fight. Without trying to sound too negative, I honestly do not recommend Fodder to the Flame for any form of content. I found this ability way too awkward to use and realized that the negative aspects of it greatly outweigh the positives. Truly, the only fun I had while testing out Fodder to the Flame was while I was testing its limits. I was able to spawn an army of demons that chased after me by simply pressing the ability on cooldown and running around a circle in the new hub city of Shadowlands, Oribos. I learned that the demons grow in strength and size the longer that you run from them, the original demon growing extremely tall and gaining a buff that made it deal 5,000% increased damage. I'm not entirely sure that this was intended, but we still had fun either way. Finally, we head over to Bastion, the first zone you will travel to while leveling in Shadowlands, where we meet the members of the Kyrian Covenant. This is my personal favorite covenant for Demon Hunter, so I'm excited to have you take a look at what you can do if you choose to join the Kyrian. The Kyrian signature ability is called Summon Steward, which summons a Kyrian Steward to your side, which will bring you a Phial of Serenity. This is a potion that can be consumed to restore 20% of your health and will remove all curse, disease, poison, and bleed effects. This phial is incredibly strong and the signature ability that I found the most useful out of all the covenants. Being able to remove harmful effects every 3 minutes can really come in handy in many situations and can even save your life. This is an overall amazing ability as it helps in all forms of content, Raid, Mythic Plus, and PvP. Kyrian Demon Hunters gain the ability Elysian Decree, which is classified as a sigil. You can place the sigil at a target location that after 2 seconds detonates, to deal arcane damage and shatter 3 lesser soul fragments from enemies that are hit. Elysian Decree is by far my favorite out of the Covenant abilities for Demon Hunter. It's helpful in many situations and contributes to your damage and survivability in a meaningful way. Elysian Decree gives you strong, consistent AoE damage every minute, with the added bonus of giving you soul fragments for healing, or even Fury if you're playing the Demonic Appetite talent. I found Elysian Decree the most useful in Mythic Plus. Depending on the level of the key, you can either get 2 uses of Elysian Decree for longer pulls, or have consistent damage for almost every pull or boss fight. While Elysian Decree was changed recently to deal reduced damage past 5 targets, I still think this is the best option for Mythic Plus, as it's simply the best for consistent raw damage output. Elysian Decree will still be very strong in the raid as well. In Castle Nathria, there are plenty of boss fights with cleave or hectic ag cleave damage profiles. And while Elysian Decree isn't the highest for pure single target damage at the moment, as soon as a second target is introduced, this immediately becomes very strong. Another thing to take note of is that the lesser soul fragments you shatter from your targets are far from insignificant. While you won't always get the full value of the healing from the soul fragments, this can really come in handy for a little bit of extra self-sustain at times. Elysian Decree really only suffers from the usual thing that other targeted location spells do, like Flame Strike, Volley, or Blizzard. If your enemies move out of the sigil before the detonation, you lose the damage. But the radius is large enough for that not to matter as much, and with enough planning and execution, you should be able to get full value from it more often than not. The only other situation I could see this being bad in is maybe PvP, where 2 seconds is usually more than enough time for an enemy player to move out of the sigil, but this can easily be pulled off with a well-timed stun or vengeful retreat slow. Overall, I'm still not 100% sure which meaningful choice I will make, but Kyrian is a very strong contender, and the Covenant that I enjoy playing the most as a Demon Hunter. I feel that Elysian Decree adds to my playstyle and is generally satisfying to press every time it comes off cooldown. Thank you all very much for watching my Covenant guide for Demon Hunter. Please be sure to like this video if you did, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below, or stop by my Twitch channel when I'm live. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel for any future videos. See you in Shadowlands.